Dum 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 dum. Hello. All right, topic three. We're going to start looking at conflict with Native Americans. A couple of things we're going to start looking at is the Homestead Act, all right, and how the government tried to entice or dum 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 dum. Hello. All right, topic three, we're going to look at conflict with Native Americans. One of the first things we're going to discuss is the Homestead Act and how the government tried to push settlers further and further west across the Mississippi. Now they don't actually force them. They offer incentives, and then that's going to lead to what are known as the Indian Wars. So we're going to look at the conflict between the settlers coming onto the Great Plains and the Native Americans. All right, so if we're looking first at how the government tries to help settlement, encourage settlement, we have two different land grants. The first one is the Homestead Act. We talked about it in topic one. That's where they give 160 acres of farmland free to farmers as long as they agree to farm it for 5 years. The second side of that is the Morrill Act, right, which essentially allows states to sell their land in order to kind of encourage farming and science in their state. Right. This is where the conflict comes in with Native Americans. All right, as the settlers come out, they do two things: they start farming, and then they start hunting buffalo. We looked at it with the railroads in terms of killing buffalo for food for the workers, right? But it starts to become a big business in terms of buffalo meat, the buffalo hide. So that picture there, that's actually buffalo skulls, and you can see this guy down here. Right, he's actually standing on one. So you have a whole pile of buffalo bones there. Right? The North American buffalo, I have a couple slides or a couple pictures and maps for you on the next page, but the North American buffalo at one point was the most populous in terms of number animal in North America. But they actually get pushed to the brink of extinction during this period for a variety of reasons. See, this guy's sitting on a stack of buffalo hides. All right. You should have learned this in 7th grade. We're just going to touch back on it, that the Plains Indians, Native Americans on the plains, relied heavily on the buffalo. It was like the center of their world. They made sure they used everything. So this this diagram goes through some of the uses of the different parts. Some of it's probably going to gross you out, but that was their way of life, and that was what was accepted for them. Right. This is a very interesting map. I don't need the chart yet. If you look at the colors, okay, the really light pink is showing you the original range, meaning North American buffalo originally inhabited this huge area, all right? And then the next dark pink is the range as of 1870, so you can see it gets narrowed down to the not the dark pink, just the medium dark pink, if there is a medium dark color. Right, and then by the end of this period, 1889, you can see they're pushed onto just these little dark spots here. Right, so the North American buffalo, right, is going to take a massive hit. Now this is just I did a little research, okay, looking at numbers before Columbus arrived in the New World. There were 60 million buffalo in North America, and then at the end of this period, it's down to 360,000. Right, which is obviously just a tremendous loss. All right, here's your first key question. What factors led to conflict between settlers and Native Americans? All right, think about the Homestead Act, obviously. Think about buffalo as well. All right, the next part we get into, all right, is the conflict with the Native Americans. So what are some of the specific ways that Native Americans tried to fight back? All right, so the title of this slide is Broken Promises, which means we're going to have a lot of mistreatment and backed out of deals between the government and the natives. Right, so we have the Second Fort Laramie Treaty in 1868. If there's a second Fort Laramie Treaty, that means that there had to be a first Fort Laramie Treaty at some point too. Right, and what this essentially did was it guaranteed reservation land to specific tribes in South Dakota. Right, it means that the government says that that's land that you can have. We won't intervene. We won't become involved. Right, you can live your life there. Free from any of our influence, and we're going to look to, we're going to say that that's not the case. Okay, the Chivington Massacre, also known as the Sand Creek Massacre, was another unfortunate interaction between the U.S. government troops and Native Americans. U.S. soldiers attempt to move them. One thing leads to another, and next thing you have is soldiers firing on the natives. Over 200 people are going to be killed. Okay, remember we talked about the Black Hills, the Second Fort Laramie Treaty? Well, it turns out um, gold is going to be discovered in in the Black Hills. So U.S. troops are going to go out there. Native Americans are going to resist. Right. This battle is also referred to as Custer's Last Stand. This is a very famous incident. A lot of you may have heard it or seen it on TV. This is George Custer down here. Right. He was the leader of probably the most popular Indian fighting regiment in the U.S. military. So he is sent on a mission to remove them from the area, right? And he actually runs into a Native American force led by Sitting Bull, right? And every single one of his soldiers is going to be overwhelmed and killed, right? And it's actually, probably just as graphic as that. That was a Native American's an eyewitness account, right? Later on, they drew that picture. All right, just a couple images. It is actually, Custer. The question is whether or not it was smart. Was it wise? Should he have retreated? Was it heroic? So it is actually something that is very, very studied in great deal, very discussed an awful lot, right? Whether or not it was the right thing to do. Right, this is just a little map for you, just to give you. Obviously, hit pause. You can go back and read it, but just to give you like a quick Cliff Notes version of it, right? He goes to advance on the village. Custer does. He splits his regiment up so that somebody can cover the retreat of the natives. And it turns out that he doesn't realize there's as many of them as there are, right? So he ends up retreating up to this hill. They get surrounded, and everybody is massacred. Okay. Wounded Knee Massacre is probably the low point, probably the end of it. The Native Americans are doing what's known as a ghost dance, which is actually a religious ritual. And U.S. soldiers who are watching it, they are threatened by it. They feel like it's a war dance, so they fire on the natives. 150 are going to be killed, and it kind of like is the. I mean, you still have some natives that are fighting against the government, but this is kind of like the last straw. All right, they just can't take it anymore, can't take the violence, and they just kind of succumb to the U.S. government. All right, this is a very interesting map showing you 1775 up here. The dark land is the land held by Native Americans. So prior to the Revolutionary War, prior to the Declaration of Independence, the dark area is all held by Native Americans. And then just over 100 years later, 1894, the dark area is land held by Native Americans. Yes, that is insane that we went from this to this, all right, in just a little bit over 100 years. Okay, here's your second key question. What were some of the ways that Native Americans resisted efforts by white settlers to take their land? Right, think about some of the incidents that were out there. Right, and the last little part we're going to look at is the Dawes Act. Right, this is obviously towards the end of the period. Here is the goal. All right, the goal is to try and assimilate. Assimilate is just a big fancy word for helping somebody blend in. All right, so Americanize would be another way of looking at it. All right, trying to convince or persuade Native Americans to give up their way of life in order to adopt a more American way of life. Right, some of the key aspects, right, breaking up tribes to try and focus on individuals, encouraging them to become farmers. That's a biggie. Right, because that would help spur more settlement, more expansion into the West, and also freeing up reservation land if they're not still attached to their tribal way of life and attached to the land. That frees up land that the government can sell and bring more farmers and settlers out west. So these pictures are showing you some Native Americans who have begun the assimilation process. You can see they start wearing different clothes, different haircuts, talking different, acting different, things like that. All right, and then here's key question 3. Go back if you need to.